want to get some airtime here, David.
Yeah.
Okay, David, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. So I know we're waiting for Councilman Salanitro, who went to the wrong place. Old habits die hard. I think, Bishop, maybe what we'll do is if it's okay, we'll begin to hear from the public, take comments from the public.
Sure.
And Mr. Salanitro will be able to watch those on TV for whatever he misses. So any comments from the public?
Goldie's not here.
Now,
Goldie's out. Where's Goldie tonight? She's over at 10 Pearl as well, huh?
She was here last time. She was here.
Okay. Now, old business dog subcommittee update. I guess, do you have an update for us you want to talk about later? We'll wait for him on that, I guess, right?
Well, he was helpful on that, but Bill's been doing a lot of the work on it, so I may
Defer to Bill? All right.
But I can give that update.
Is he right around the corner, Bishop, or is he?
Well, he's at the corner of Westchester and Pearl, so he's about 5 minutes. He's got to find a parking spot.
Yep.
He should be up here in tick.
And then we have the presentation from Friends of Rye Town Park. Why don't you start with your management report? We'll start with that. Because that, again, he can read that.
Right.
And I want to just thank Trustee Luis Marino for sitting in for Mayor Pagano. For those who don't know him, Luis is our first elected Latino representative here in Portchester. He normally sits on that end of the table for village meetings, and he does wonderful service for our community. Thanks so much for sitting in today.
Thank you, Mr. Carvin. Appreciate it.
Great.
Okay.
Bill.
All right. Well, this is, as you noticed from being in your folder, that this is a very short report.
Yep.
It's quieter during the off-season, but we have been busy in a variety of projects that will hopefully come to fruition in the coming months, and particularly as we get closer to the reopening of the park in April for more active recreational use. So just to quickly run through the maintenance items that highlight, Bishop Nowotnik has reported that the work will start soon on the damaged stone walls. And I think if you drive by the park on Forest Avenue, you'll notice that there was a car that came and crashed into the entryway there, the pedestrian entryway, and there was a delay, I guess, in getting the insurance all in order. But it is kind of an eyesore, and we're happily learning that it will be fixed fairly soon. And so that's that. The Central Tree Service actually started today removing the 6 trees that they were working on, that were contracted to do before the end of the year. So they expect that the work will be finished by tomorrow or the next day if the weather's too bad to do that. And we had another incident about what they call a hanger, which is a big branch that falls down and gets caught into the lower branches and then is a risk. So that's been taken care of by our own contractor. And I guess the main thing that I've been working on with the committee that's, I guess you could say the Dogs on Leash Committee, or whatever, on or off leash committee, is, and I don't know if we want to go hold that off till later. I mean, it's part of the report here, basically, but it's been ongoing, and we're developing a variety of things. We have the new law, as I think everybody has a copy of the law in their packet, and then there is the signage that we're going to be putting together. There is the information that's going to be sent out to the media, and I guess provided through the city's website, and we'll put something on the park's website, and there'll be things put on the bulletin boards. Obviously, whenever you have a new law, you need to really get the word out as to what that law is. And I think, I don't know, should we hold off on any further discussion of this at this point? Or
I have another question, and we'll hold off for another minute or so. The Lustgarten Foundation, who are they?
That's pancreatic cancer is their cause, and I've worked with both them and the NAMI, which is the mental health awareness, and we've pretty much come up with good
Oh, okay.
arrangements for both of those. Those are all pretty much
Okay, I know, but
settled.
there was a group that visited the park with a view towards maybe, eventually looking to hit our bid to outsource, Bishop. What's the name of that group?
She wanted to operate a
Something
museum.
Circles,
Yeah,
Right.
and I can't remember the first.
Living Circles or,
Common Circles, I think is what it's called. I don't know very much about the group. I apologize, I should have put a sheet that they gave us, an informative sheet in your packet. They wanted to, they were looking for a venue to have as they describe it, an anthropological museum that would assist in their goal of bringing people together and having a better understanding of various peoples. They didn't really share very much in the way of what they were intending to build or what have you, but they did indicate that they were going to come back to me with a request for more information.
okay, because the one thing is, would you send that sheet to the board
Yes.
members so we have that? Just remind everybody the date you took them around. And the
That-
reason,
Yep, sorry.
please, Bill, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so we would need a copy of that also. So
Yes, absolutely.
Sure.
And the reason I wanted you to remember, I thought this might, because, while our RFP process was unsuccessfully, finished, I think we're still open to, proposals, and if we get one or two proposals, we might relaunch the process. As we all know, we only got one bid, so we couldn't move forward. But if that gentleman were still interested, we got a couple of other bids, I'm very confident the board would take a look at it. I think that certainly my fervent hope is we could bring somebody in, and a group like that is perfect for the park. I mean, absolutely perfect. And it'd be a nice compliment to the Children's Museum down the road in Rytown Park. I guess, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, along the same vein, Dan Biederman, who's advising the county on Playland, reached out to me and just asked us what we're doing, and he said he was sorry he missed our previous RFP, but he'd like to come by and take a look and see, one, what synergies there might be in an eventual Playland proposal, and two, maybe even on a standalone basis. So I'll contact him again and do that. So anyway, to the public at home, we're still open for business. We're still open for ideas. And I think the restaurant contract, remind me, Bishop, that is?
December 31st, 2016.
Right, so John's got 2 more summers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but as we all know, those summers come by faster and faster every year. That's certainly in my case.
just a few other things to finish up my report.
Yep.
We had the Light the Night Walk. We had the Turkey Run, which we cooperate with the City of Rye, and we actually got Rytown Park's name on their collectible T-shirts. So a little reminder of everybody about the part that Rytown Park plays in that event. And then, apropos of what you were talking about from a slightly different angle, the Friends of Edith Reed Sanctuary, Save the Sound, and the Rye Historical Society and the Westchester Children's Museum and Rytown Park are going to have a get-together on the 16th of January. I think it's going to be over at Edith Reed Sanctuary, to talk about the common concerns that all the neighbors of Playland have, and what, just throw out ideas as to, how the groups might cooperate with Playland or ensure that whatever Playland does doesn't interfere with its neighbors. And so that's going to be coming up.
That's what'd you say, January 16th?
January 16th. I'm
That's
not
a
sure.
Friday.
Yeah, it's a Friday. I'm not sure
So
what
that's
the time
before our
is.
next meeting. So would you do me a favor and send a reminder, email Bishop to everybody that week? And again, maybe just post it on our website.
Okay.
Because that's an important meeting for us to attend if we can.
Okay.
Friday evening. Wow. Are they offering hors d'oeuvres?
Well, I think it's in the daytime. I think it's in the morning, probably. So, probably not exactly a party, I don't think.
All right.
If you can make sure, Bill, that you get me the details.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I think those are the highlights. We did have another dog bite, as I mentioned in
So
here.
what happened with the dog bite?
Well, I just found out about it through the Rye Record. I guess they don't really notify us if these things happen, but the police were called. They filed a report. They notified the county health department. They got a hold of the people whose dog it was. So I think they covered all the bases. But again, it's an example of, things can
Do you
happen.
know what time of the day it was?
I think it was, well, no, I don't. It just said that it happened during the day. So I don't know how much more information we would need, but it's just these
Right.
things do happen.
Well, what, do, should we, well, we might as well launch the conversation, I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
So did you want to provide an update, or?
Sure. Well, Bill, why don't you stay up here, because Bill's done a lot of the
Yeah.
footwork. But
Great.
before our last meeting, we talked about this sort of subcommittee that we put together with Bill, myself, and city staff, including the city clerk and the police department, to try and organize what is really both, a media campaign to make sure everybody knows about it, as well as a way to make sure that we inform people of the change and enforce the change in policy. And so I guess the stage we're at now is really just putting together signage, which we've been exchanging back and forth, so that the signage is clear. We also need to start putting together articles, press releases, so that those go into the media, and coordinate with the unofficial or sort of official, semi-official dog group, so that they can get that word out to their constituents. The goal would be, as I said at the last meeting, that January 1st is when the beginning registration would open, and there would be sort of progressive enforcement, with initially soft enforcement, just with warnings, and then progressively more clear enforcement, so that if we continued to have a problem after a sort of a soft enforcement period, we would then ask the police to begin issuing tickets. So we're still talking right now, but we expect that as of January 1, we'll have this, coordinated approach among city staff, park staff, and our police department.
Let me just add one thing, which is that a significant component of this is the registration and tag and ID part of it. In other words, we're not just changing the law saying that you can have a dog off the leash between 6 and 9 a.m., but we have a whole system that in order to do that, you have to get a permit, which would mean going through the city clerk's office. And that's the other thing we're finalizing. We had a draft from the Rye City Clerk, and I think pretty much, as far as I know, everybody was happy more or less with what she outlined, which would be that you would come in there. First of all, you would have to have a dog. Your dog would have to have a license to do that. And then you would file for a permit, and that would involve, it would be free for the first year, but eventually then there would be a fee involved, and they would fill out a form, and then there would be a tag you'd put on the dog's collar, and then you'd have your own card for whoever's walking the dog to show that they were registered. And that, I have to say, I don't think that's all going to be ready by January 1st. So, I mean, they'd have to actually literally get the tags and do all that stuff, so that none of that's been done as far as I know.
I think when we last met with Dawn, she was planning on having it ready to go as of January
well,
1st.
that
So,
may be
I
so.
think registration would begin on that date. That's
You mean whatever day of the week would
right, whenever the first
would
work
be probably
day
the
is.
3rd or the 4th or some day
Right,
like that.
right.
Friday.
Well, I'm not sure, but anyway, hopefully before people sort of break for the holiday, we would want to make sure that all that's in the works.
I'll confirm with Dawn. I'll see her at the city council meeting tomorrow, but it's my understanding that she was moving forward with a January 1st start date for
Good.
registration and things like that.
Yeah, and she provided us with the little bullet points, which I already put it on the parks website, just to get it out there so we could look at it. And so unless somebody has any changes, we'll stick with that as far as the steps that have to be taken.
Right.
And I think
Linda-
that's pretty much
Linda,
everything.
did you have a question? Yep, please.
This is relative to the dog situation. As I understand it, the new law allows a single owner or handler to have up to 3 loose dogs during this time period. Has there been any discussion on limiting the number of permits or registrants that you're going to allow? Because word will definitely travel beyond the borders of Rye and Portchester.
So one of the
I'm just asking.
one of the reasons why we went through this registration was because it gave us the ability to monitor how many people were taking advantage of it. At this point, there is no limit, but if it becomes a problem, if it becomes really too crowded for the size of the park and the number of people who want to be there with their dogs off leash, that's something we can certainly visit and decide whether or not there should be a limit on that.
What about limiting to Rye Town and Rye City?
I don't think we're allowed to do that.
You're not allowed to do that?
I think you're not allowed to exclude non-residents legally from
How about
parks.
charging them then, $500?
I mean, you can certainly differentiate the rates charged. The first year, because this is, at least from the park perspective, this is a temporary change in policy. If there's no fee charged, if I'm going to ask Dawn to keep tabs on the number of people who've registered. If it seems like we're getting a huge surge in registrations, we'll take action to see if we need to limit it. So, but I think this is new, so I don't know that it makes sense to limit it at the outset. I think we can wait and see how many people come rushing for registration.
And just to be clear then, so if someone has their dog off leash in the designated area and doesn't have a registration, then they're in violation of the law?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, so that's why, so the hope is that the increased regulation, right? So there was the dog bite incident. It'd be interesting to know if it took place before 9 o'clock or after 9 o'clock, because one of the trade-offs here is increased enforcement
Right.
and vigilance. And so, again, the hope is you turn the dog owners into dog supporters for the regulation.
Right.
And, and obviously they're very exposed. If all of a sudden there's an increase in dog bites, they're going to be obviously, and so, the hope is that we can, with increased enforcement, and regulation, and attention, begin to turn the tide.
That's the hope. That is absolutely the hope. The hope is to have a park that people can go into and know what they're going to get, right? They're either going to get dogs on leash after 9 a.m. or dogs off leash before 9 a.m. And hopefully that's the balance we're hoping to strike, that
Right.
This is really going to be a park that is available for everyone.
Beautiful.
There's one other point
Yep.
that I think Commissioner Brett knows about more than I do, but in the budget discussion for the city of Rye at the last council meeting, there's a proposal to add another enforcement officer to the police force in Rye.
That's correct, yes.
And
That is-
maybe you want to explain that.
So we haven't voted on the budget yet, so I wasn't going to mention it yet. But what I will say is in the proposed budget that we're voting on tomorrow night, there is an additional police enforcement officer who would do traffic enforcement and enforcement of this leash law
Oh,
in
beautiful.
Rye Park. So,
Wonderful.
So no promises. You never know what happens. You never know what happens
Right.
till it happens.
Till it happens.
But that is the goal. We really do want this to work, and we
Beautiful.
want you to know that the city of Rye is taking this seriously. So hopefully that will all move forward, and we'll have exactly what we all were hoping to get out of this.
Wonderful.
So hope
Good.
we shall see.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Commissioner Salanitro, welcome. I apologize for changing the venue on you.
Perfect. I went to Dominic's I went to Nehemiah's to get some bread for the house.
There you go.
Thank you.
Well, why don't we try and approve the minutes from the last meeting? Anybody have any questions, comments on the minutes from the last meeting? Okay. If not, can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Yes.
I can vote on it even though I
Yes,
was
you
there.
can. Yeah. Beautiful. Okay, so approved. And now, we had the management report, Commissioner Salanitro, and I think we'll race through this meeting, and we're now looking for the presentation from Friends of Rye Town Park.
Hello, everybody. As most of you probably know, I'm David Rasmussen, and I'm on the board of the Friends of the Rye Town Park. And I'm here today to talk a little bit about our tree management and maintenance program that's evolved over really since 2013. Because as Friends of Rye Town Park, we've recognized for a long time that the trees, particularly the mature trees in the Rye Town Park, are one of the park's most valuable assets. So approximately a year ago, we commissioned the Bartlett tree experts and their research laboratories to do a complete inventory and management report involving all of the 331 trees in Rye Town Park. And as you can see, it's quite an extensive study. It's full of tables and graphs. It's categorized trees in any one of a large number of ways, both maintenance needs, type of tree, whether the trees are invasive or not, the value of the trees. There's many, many different categories. And they also have a program which is up on the wall called ArborScope, by which all of the information that's in this rather extensive book can be easily pulled up with a click of the mouse on a computer screen.
Wow.
The ArborScope is basically a licensing agreement, and I'll get into that in a little more detail a little later on. But before I do, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how the Friends of Rytown Park feel we might want to proceed in terms of tree preservation and tree management. We have, I think, a number of very valuable trees. Some are called witness trees because of their age. There's some trees that are 300 and 400 years old. There's many that are 100 years old. And there's a number of others that are probably 75 years old. And these are what we call mature trees, and they're a major characteristic of the park's landscape. What we are proposing is, I think in the past, for a long time, we've really taken a reactive approach to trees in the park. When something goes wrong, we have to remove a tree. But otherwise, other than fertilization and soil aeration and certain programs that the Friends have done, there really hasn't been much in the way of a proactive approach. So what the Friends is urging is that the Commission consider actually budgeting in each annual budget, specifically for tree maintenance, tree preservation, and tree work. And going through this report, and also Bill and Linda and I and Bishop met several times, and we actually did a walkthrough with the Bartlett arborist, Fraser Perlmutter, and we came up with what we thought would be a good place to begin in the next year in terms of tree preservation. There's really two major aspects that we think are of critical importance right now. The first has to do with the preservation and maintenance of the 10 most valuable trees in the park, which are identified in this report. And the value, by their calculation, is approximately $290,000 of these 10 trees. They have a complex way of doing it, which I won't go into because it's too detailed.
Japanese tree, and they tell me it's worth a fortune. I'm not trying to. I can't figure out how to sell it though.
Yeah, no, maybe it increases the value of your house. I don't know how that works either. But they do explain it, and it's kind of interesting. The other thing is that there's certain insect pests that are threatening some of these mature trees right now. Probably the one that's of most concern at the moment is what's called the emerald ash borer, which has just recently arrived in Westchester County and is threatening the white ash trees in the park. But the other one is the ongoing problem with the Dutch elm disease, which really just affects one tree, which I'll get into in a little more detail in a second. But just in terms of starting with the 10 most valuable trees in the park, there's a great variety of species. They're almost all native trees, and they're all very impressive in terms of size and beauty. But because some of them have gone without any serious maintenance for a number of years, Bartlett basically has identified, I would say what's common to all of the trees is a need for pruning and thinning of the canopy. And then several of the trees, Bartlett has also recommended that there be an installation of cabling in the branches. And the reason for these recommendations is not only does it preserve the life of the tree.
Cabling does hurt. What was that?
Cabling. What they do is they use metal cables, and they put them, when you have a tree that branches out and has several different trunks as it goes up, if the tree is not cabled and you have a major storm or a high wind of any kind, what tends to happen is the wind hits the tree in such a way that it tears the leaders that go in different directions and causes splits and thereby damages the tree. If it's cabled, then all of the leaders or trunks of the tree will go in the same direction. So it vastly minimizes the danger of the tree really becoming significantly damaged in the storm. The pruning of the trees basically removes dead wood, which can be hazardous, but it also reduces, to some degree, and Bartlett, because they're arborists, knows exactly how to do this, it reduces the mass of leaves so that when you, again, if you get hit by a significant wind, there isn't as much in the way of foliage to catch the wind, and there's less likelihood of damage to the trees. To do the work that Bartlett has proposed on these 10 trees would total approximately $6,000, which is a significant number. But once it's done for a long time. The extensive pruning of the type that they're proposing is not an annual expense. It's done, and it'll last for a number of years. And although the cables have to be checked for safety on an annual basis, their life expectancy is a long time, too. They can go for 10 or 20 years if they're installed properly. So we wouldn't anticipate an expense quite that large in future years, but that's probably about what it would be for the 10 most valuable trees in the park. The second aspect that I mentioned as inoculation. But before I get into that, I just wanted to allude briefly to this ArborScope program, because we're actually going to use the ArborScope to show you what we're talking about in terms of the inoculation. The ArborScope is a licensing agreement with Bartlett that allows us immediate access by any one of a number of different categories to the extensive information that they've done as part of this tree management and inventory program. So that, for example, if you wanted to bring up the oldest trees, or you wanted to look at native trees or invasive trees, or if you wanted to look at trees that have been donated, or trees that needed maintenance of various kinds, all you have to do is click onto that category.
Where is this system located now?
It's
It's
a
on
web.
the web.
It's a web system.
So we can provide a link from our website? Or not?
No,
Proprietary?
Oh, it's proprietary?
yes.
Okay.
It's essentially a licensing agreement, is the way we understand it.
Yeah, it's more a management tool for us, if you will, rather than for the public.
And it would have a number of advantages because, for example, we know now where all of the 331 trees in the park are, and we know what kind of trees they are, and we know what their needs are. But as work is done, for example, if pruning is done on certain trees, all of that can be added to the inventory. So we have a dynamic running inventory of exactly what's been done and what needs to be done. It could also be useful to groups such as the Friends of Rytown Park, because if we, for example, were to apply to a foundation or to a state agency for funding, a grant of some sort, it's much easier for us to target what we have in mind, and it can be done very quickly with the ArborScope. And it could also be used for private individual if they have a particular interest in particular kinds of trees. So it has value that way too. The cost of the ArborScope it's done on a 3-year basis, so it's $1,500 for 3 years, which is $500 a year, which presumably would be shared to some degree with the Friends of Rytown Park. So it would be, I think, a useful tool for both the Park Commission and the Friends of Rytown Park. And we'll use it, I think, very briefly right now, because what I wanted to do is, I'll talk first about the elm tree, because there's only one significant American elm tree in the park. It's at the northwest corner near Rye Beach Avenue and Forest Avenue, where the entrance is there. It's a beautiful old, very graceful American elm that the Friends of Rytown Park has been inoculating against the Dutch elm disease for a long time, probably over 10 years at this point. But it needs another inoculation this year, the cost of which is $1,300. Those inoculations are good for 3 to 4 years once they're done. And they're pretty effective at preventing the elm bark beetle, which is the carrier of the Dutch elm disease, from getting into the tree.
Is this one of the 10 most valuable trees?
It is also one of the 10 most valuable trees, and it's also one of the trees that Bartlett has recommended some pruning work be done. And also because of the threat from the bark beetle and the Dutch elm disease, if work were to be done on that tree, it should be done while the tree is dormant during the winter. In fact, there's a number of trees, according to Bartlett, where it's actually easier to do when the foliage is not on the tree. But we thought maybe some of the cabling and some of the other things should really be top priority and should be done within the next few months, if at all possible. In terms of the emerald ash borer, that's just recently arrived. Unlike the Dutch elm disease, which has been going on for years, the emerald ash borer is just arriving in this part of the world right now. It's been in the Northeast for a few years, but I think it's only this past summer that's been identified as being present in Westchester County. We have 21 white ash trees in the park. They are located, the majority of them are located, interestingly.
Yep, hold on. Ay.
They're called white ashes, so it should be under W.
They're up on top.
Oh, ash white, okay.
Ash white. Okay. And let me just bring the park a little bit further away, and I think you'll see.
They're clustered very closely to Seaside Johnny's. There's a glen that's
Yeah.
kind of boggy. and there's a little
Right there is
overlook
Seaside Johnny's restaurant.
Yeah, if you've been in the park, you'll notice there's a sort of, it looks like a dry creek bed that runs more or less from the duck pond toward the beach and the restaurant. And on the hill along, mostly I would say on the south side of that, growing right on the hill are a number of these ash trees, all in a row. And they they're beautiful old trees for the most part. And they also form a very nice green buffer between the buildings in the park and the lawn space and give a continuous green appearance when you're standing on the lawn. Bartlett has given us 2 proposals for inoculation of these trees. Not all of them, as I mentioned, he's talking about 17 because some of the trees are not really worth inoculating because of age or structural problems and may not last that long anyway. But 17 of them are in relatively good condition and are worth doing, according to Bartlett. He's given us 2 proposals. And when I say he, I mean Fraser, the arborist from Bartlett. The most expensive of the 2 proposals is a biannual injection of the actual roots in the trunk of the tree. That would run about $6,589. The less expensive proposal is an annual injection of the soil around the tree, and that runs $2,195. So when we're talking about the more expensive one, we're talking about $389 per tree, roughly.
Sorry, so this would cover, so we have the 10 most valuable trees that would be covered from the original proposal.
Right.
And this would be another 17 trees?
Another 17 trees, yes.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Oh, okay. It's really, in their minds, it's a matter of when the insect is going to reach the park. And they've done, Fraser's done an assessment of the trees. Bishop, if you went to a Zoom
Well, it's just-
on this,
yeah.
you'll see by tree number what he's
Right.
proposing that we protect.
What is the probability that we protect the park, trees in the park, if we do these things?
All I can tell you
How
is
much do
there's-
we enhance the, security of the trees?
From what I understand from speaking with Fraser, it enhances the likelihood of the tree's survival tremendously during the time that the
Invasion is in place.
well, during the time that the insecticide is effective. The thing is, though, it's effective for 2 years under one proposal and effective for only 1 year under the other. Although if you did the annual one biannually, it would still be cheaper than the more expensive.
So I apologize, but in terms of personally, I'm supportive, and so I'm just trying to get a handle on the full, let's just get to the full ask.
Okay, well, the thing with
The
this,
pictures are fine,
Yeah.
so you got 6,000 for the first 10 trees.
right,
Another 6,500 for the next 17 trees. You got
Potentially.
1,500 for
I mean-
the system, right?
Yeah.
What else are we looking at here?
And the
Dutch elm.
The Dutch elm, the American elm tree would have to be inoculated. The way I calculate,
And what, yeah, okay.
I mean, the way I calculated it, if we did all of the things, if we did the most expensive proposals all the way through, it could run to about $15,500. If we went with the less expensive proposals, we were talking more about $9,000. So that's give or take a few dollars, but that's roughly what we're talking about.
And I understood there's some urgency to get some of the work done this winter, correct?
Ideally, yes, because it's easier to do it when the trees are dormant and the branch structure can be observed. And also, I think it's probably safer for the public because there's fewer people in the
Well,
park.
Commissioner Salanitro, you're
What am I?
our expert in terms of,
Really?
everything.
You
but-
proclaim me an expert?
Arborist.
well, I don't think
Trees.
there's an immediate need to do the inoculation.
Do we need I guess my question is, do we need to make a decision tonight?
I think you need to make a commitment maybe to budget money for the trees. Our problem, the Friends situation is that, assuredly, we feel this is important and we're prepared to contribute in some fashion. I can't tell you
Sure.
in what percentage.
Right.
Until we re-examine our own treasury and have our
Well,
next board
well,
meeting. So that's not going to take
I
place
would
till
love
January.
one of the things we're doing our budget tonight, and you're in budget season, and we do 5-year projections. And one thing is very clear, the reason we're here is we sold Town Hall. So we have a little bit of money now for capital expenditures. And what we're thinking is rather than preserve that building we had, which would have required $2 million in capital expenditures, we said, look, let's downsize a little bit, let's reconfigure where we are, and take those monies and invest them in our parks. So from our standpoint, from the town of Rye standpoint, this is an opportune time. What I would love to see is a 5-year plan. Where you sort of, say, look, this is, we've got 331 trees, this is the plan, these are the risks. I would love to see a 5-year plan. Now, if that could wait till next month, that would be my ideal scenario where we could present to the whole board and have an actual proposal. If you need a decision tonight on something, then we'll talk to the goodwill of the board, and we could, do a sort of a urgent program in the meantime if the other board members were open-minded to that.
Well, I just,
I was just going to
Can I-
add one.
you want to
Add one thing,
add
is that I think we don't feel that this has to be decided tonight, but we need to know that you're in support of the idea that there would be funds in the budget that
Oh, yeah.
that would be
Okay, well, that's easy
negotiable.
for me. I mean-
And by certainly whatever work needs to be done while the trees are dormant could be done in February and March. And so that's.
If that's the
But I-
case, certainly, well, look, so let me hear from, I personally, again, so as I say, the timing is good for Town of Rye, because Town of Rye is committed, and I don't know if these will be considered capital expenditures, now we'll have to figure that out. But ultimately, we're putting together a 5-year investment plan, or want to, for our parks. And we want to reinvest the monies that we get generating from the building into our parks. And we feel the public would far greater benefit from investment in our parks than having a fancy office to go to. So we're fully supportive. I would love to see a plan, but let me hear from our other commissioners.
I just had a couple of questions, and maybe I'll add to those questions with the answers that I get. The inoculation that you're speaking of, is that a root fertilization process, or is it a spray? What's the process of this inoculation? Briefly.
As I understand it, both the more expensive and the less expensive ones are injections.
Okay.
But the more expensive one is an injection right into both the roots and the trunk of the tree itself.
Okay.
Whereas the less expensive one is an injection into the soil close to the trees, and then the roots of the trees take that up
Okay.
from the soil into the structure of the tree. And I think, as I understand these inoculations, they would be done in the spring rather than during the dormant season.
Since I've been on the commission, I know that year after year we've done with the Friends a lot of tree maintenance, and both in pruning and deep root fertilization for the trees. Is what this campaign is about, to preserve the trees against, or inoculate the trees against these diseases, over and above the other requirements for maintenance, if you will? In other words, like Commissioner Carvin was saying, what's the bottom line? I mean, what other things will these trees require in the course of the calendar year?
Well, that's one of the advantages of the ArborScope program, is that all of that information is actually available on that. But speaking very briefly about the inoculation question, the inoculation would be in addition to common maintenance that we've done. It's something that's really addressing a particular problem that's in the area right now, which is, I think, the most significant one.
Does it
is emerald ash.
supersede the tree requirement?
Could I ask this question differently, because I'm not sure if you were here. What I heard you say, you're going to be proactive rather than reactive.
That's what we're
On
hoping.
the disease, though, I think.
Well, that's my,
relative to
so that's
disease.
so let me just ask the same question differently. So does the proactive approach cover all of the tree
Right,
costs?
that's my, yeah. If you had
For
a
the
tree
park,
bu-
or are we
right.
doing a proactive approach that cover, then we'll still have the annual maintenance?
We don't want to segment the care of trees. Let's assume, for argument's sake, we have a separate budget line for tree maintenance, tree protection, care of trees. That's a budget line item. How much money do you need in that, in an annual basis, to support the requirements for all the trees in the? Okay, so that's the number. No, what I'm trying to say is, Linda's answer was $30,000, just for the fact that she's not near the microphone, but that's the number. So what I'm getting at is that we should get our hands around the number, because
Right.
the trees seem like they're going to
Bill,
expand
I
upon
really
the
actually want
requirements.
to, I think what I'd like to propose
Which is
is
not,
that,
I don't have a problem with that.
following up on Commissioner Salanitro, make a comprehensive proposal to preserve the park's most important assets is 331 trees. So, and it should include annual maintenance and capital expenditure. And if you come back in the January meeting, what would be ideal if you could get us a report ahead of time? We could look at it, just something to look at ahead of time, put the numbers in, and we'll have a
Yeah, we'll have a
conversation.
subcategory into the budget, care of trees, parks, whatever you want to call it.
Let
But-
me just say
but
that.
I want to follow up on one more thing
Well,
before
can I
you
just,
speak. Go
one
ahead,
thing is
speak.
that this is my worksheet that I've been working on, doing that, and it's a 5-year plan, starting with this
Okay.
year. We've spent over $20,000 this year on
No,
trees.
I know that.
And we've spent money every year on it, but there's no specific line item in the budget. That's why we're putting together this, which is based on the inventory, which takes all
So,
the
yeah, but
categories.
Bill, what we're saying is great.
So we will
But
have
instead of
this-
doing that on an ad hoc basis,
More emergency.
we are fully supportive of the proposal that came before us tonight. Rather than react, We want to be proactive.
When is the next meeting?
January 20th. And Commissioner Salanitro, do you have another question?
I did. I just want to follow up. Because we have this is a great program, by the way, and you have a licensed arborist, you have a professional in the care of trees, which is phenomenal. Since we now have this comprehensive look globally of the whole park, is there a way, maybe it's a Bishop question actually, to tell our insurance company this is what we have? Is there any way to, it seems like everything in the world is insurable. You know where I'm going, right?
Yeah, I know.
Inoculations, I'm thinking of children, I'm thinking of, pets and everything else. Is there any way that this,
Dogs off leash.
yeah, this scope of work, this management plan for the care of trees is, since it is proactive, is something that our insurance company may want to chime in on and say, listen, we can insure against that. Obviously, Mother Nature is Mother Nature, and trees and diseases and so forth. But because these are specimen trees, I don't want to use the word specimen, but they have value. So it should be possibly incorporated as an asset in our asset management, that these trees are part of our asset to Wright Town Park.
We certainly can approach the insurers and share with them the information we have in the database and see how they would recommend we approach this. The concern is always the question of, okay, if you increase your value by, let's just say, the $2 million or $3 million of tree inventory, and you want that insured, that now becomes a contribution
I agree.
premium. So
No question about that.
We will bring it to the insurers, we'll share it with them, and see what
Great.
kind of advice they give
Terrific.
us.
My point is very simple. I'd like to, as much as possible, protect the investment that you're proposing we make in the long term, because what you said to me kind of like alarmed me, that it's not a question of if, it's when. And that's alarming, because if the insects and if the diseases do come, which they're supposed to come, is this investment a short-term investment or a long-term investment? And I guess the answer to the question is what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, that it has to be done annually in order to be preventative against that disease.
It has to be kept up
Right.
for as long as that insect is in this area
Understood.
geographically.
Understood.
When it moves on to, farther north or wherever it's
Right.
going, then it's a moot point.
Because the 5-year plan is that. It's an investment into the future for the protection of these trees, which is great, and then we need to do that, but that's why I'm looking at this whole thing with possibly with the insurance.
I'm sorry.
There's also other possibilities. For example, if it turned out not to be cost-effective to continually inoculate the white ash trees, you could inoculate them for a number of years while you planted other trees
Well, that's,
that were more
pardon me,
disease-resistant.
Dave, that's precisely why I'd like you guys to come up with a proposal. In
I'd
other words,
I'd
we're-
like to kind of backpedal a little bit then and ask for your approval to purchase the lease for the ArborScope software, because that tool will enable us to get
Yeah,
a lot
that's fine with me,
farther,
because
or a lot faster
Awesome.
in
So
terms
what
of
is the-
planning.
So what is the lease for the ArborScope software?
years.
1,500.
It's a 3-year lease for
$500
$1,500 aggregate, so it's $500 a year, but you pay it for a 3-year lease.
And does that
And it's
lock-
renewed.
And is that through Bartlett, or is that
Yes.
through ArborScope? So then we would be committed to Bartlett doing this tree work?
Yes.
Okay.
We would
So
recommend that because they've been with us for a long, long time.
I
They've
know-
been, they've done a lot of work in the park. They know it very well. They're probably the premier tree company, because not only are they arborists, but they also have a laboratory where they can analyze cuttings from trees for diseases. And they have a sophisticated understanding of how to do things like pruning. So it's not just getting somebody who's indiscriminately cutting branches off of trees. Everything's done according to a plan.
I understand that taking care of trees is a science. It is, in fact, it's a very valuable skill and a science. But I recall that when we were looking at removing some of the trees, that Bartlett was among the more expensive
Yes.
They were.
options.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tree removal is really not their thing unless it happens to be a very big tree. They have all the equipment, and they're respectful of the environment. That's all I can tell you. The particular arborist with whom we've been working for several years now is an historical arborist. He has a real interest in the park for its historic significance, and has worked in other cities in similar parks to try to preserve the landscape. I lost my point. I had a point
Actually,
I was going to make, but
I have to close. I've got to go
anyway, I'm not sure. To be honest with you, I don't know that we're locked into to Bartlett necessarily for the work. We would be locked into them for the ArborScope software, but it would rest heavily on us to do all the maintenance of that database.
I would have thought you can.
As it is now, there would
still
be
put out the
limited.
work for bids, right?
Right, well, and we may need to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So I guess on the ArborScope, I just wonder, can we put that off a month?
It's up to them. I think they need it for their presentation.
Well, let me,
Yeah.
well, maybe council, since council's here, question, is there a way, since this is a specialty service, a professional service by an arborist, is there a way that we would be able to, by resolution of this board, accept the arborist as, I want to use the word sole source, it's probably not the right term to use, but is there any way that we could, by resolution, use Bartlett tree experts as our sole source provider on tree-related work?
Yep.
Since we're adopting a master plan of sorts?
Yeah, it's a professional service, so you don't have to go out to bid. I mean, it's like like a engineer or
Right.
something else. So I don't see why you couldn't do that.
So it would fall under that, so maybe we can do that by resolution.
We can, I mean, I think that, look, it's $500. Is it?
No,
it's
I'm not talking about that, I'm
Well,
talking
that's a
about the
different
bigger
story.
picture.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
more concerned about the
Commissioner
big
Brett is
picture.
saying.
Right.
We don't.
Well, if I may, as Mr. Lawyer pointed out, the tree maintenance, though, is a separate issue, because that is a,
It is competitive?
yeah. it's
Okay.
ma- yeah, like-
Even
like-
though it's
like-
done by a an arborist under,
Well, like we do with the town, Zuccarello, what's his name?
Zika.
Zika, so
Yeah.
we put that out to bid. I mean, right, Bishop? That's all
Yes.
bidded through the
What ends
procurement
up
correct.
process.
happening is Zika wins most of the bids. In other
Right,
words,
yeah, I know.
Bartlett's there. I think it keeps him honest. I don't see any reason why us using, I mean, look, our decision in front of us right now
is the $1,500.
is the $1,500. Are we prepared to?
Which is well below the procurement
Yes.
numbers, so you
Yeah,
can
so
do whatever you want.
The
with it.
question is, are we prepared? Well, I think what they do is they need it in order to make their presentation. Is that correct?
And my concern on the $1,500 is whether or not it locks us into Bartlett.
But it doesn't
for-
lock us in.
No,
It doesn't
It
lock
does.
us in.
It does or
no,
does not?
it would, it would not.
Okay.
You
Just-
could easily, if, let's say,
Yeah.
you could
Well-
put the inoculation out to bid, even,
Yeah.
they've identified the trees that need to be inoculated, same way we did with the removal.
Right.
We used Bartlett to designate which trees
Okay.
through the report, but then we actually, Central
Oh, okay.
Tree
That's fine.
won the bid.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the scope of work identified by this program will allow us to do competitive bids. That's fine.
All right,
Okay.
perfect, good.
That's
Can I
fine.
get a motion to approve ArborSource,
ArborScope,
ArborScope
So moved.
technology, second,
Second.
for $1,500? Okay, all in favor? We take the roll, Mr. Nowotnik?
okay. Commissioner Brett,
Yes.
Commissioner Salanitro.
Yes.
Commissioner Marino in this
Yes.
case? Commissioner Carvin?
Yes. Okay,
Okay.
now I have to, I apologize, I'm racing to a wake. Is there any new business, or what's this correspondence, Bishop?
There is none, but there is a bench update.
Okay, you know what, can you give us the bench update next time?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Can I get a motion to bring the meeting to a close?
So
To
moved.
adjourn? So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Okay.
Happy holidays to everybody.
Oh, yeah, happy holidays, everybody.
Happy
New Year.
Hanukkah.
Don't shop in those Christmas trees, oh, no, sorry.
Bishop, you're going to have...